All right, everyone. It's Mark Horne here with Andrew Iskar. I'm gesturing with my hand, but you can't see it. There we go. All right. Andrew's the handsomer person with a better camera, both. Um, hey, and we just wanted to talk about Genesis 1. I wrote a book on Proverbs, so obviously I'll try to say anything I can about wisdom because, I want to stay on theme, but it's my general philosophy to teach the Bible. I know that's Andrew's general life philosophy, so we're just going to talk about it. And
Absolutely.
let's see, Andrew, I got the NASB. I didn't ask you who. Tell you what, I'll read the first three verses and we'll take turns. Okay, does that sound, like you'll
That
read
sounds good.
them?
I've got the new King James version,
Yeah,
so we'll be dancing with two left feet. But
yeah, that's right. I've got the ESV here as well on my Kindle, but it's an old NASB I found with some notes, so I just go ahead and use that.
all right, perfect.
I remember a pastor used to say that the KJV was like what they used to talk, how they used to talk. It sounds that way. And he said the NIV is how people talk now, and the NASB is how no one has ever talked. But I actually think sometimes it sounds a little bit like Hebrew. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
all
Mm-hmm.
right. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface or the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters, the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. Now I just realized that starts into the first day. So you read verse 3, 4, and 5 when you do your thing. But let's stop there and call
Yeah,
that
we
the
can stop right
introduction.
there.
Yes,
Yep.
because I want to talk about that. I'm not sure. I think there's reason why people argue that grammatically this is not saying in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth and here's how. It's saying in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and then goes on to talk about more about how he created the earth, saying the earth that he made, the earth he made then was formless and void. I don't know. I'm so far away from my Hebrew lessons, and I wasn't an expert then that I can say I know this is absolutely true. I will say that in Exodus and elsewhere where it talks about God creating everything, it's the heavens and the earth and the sea under the earth. Um, that definitely seems to mean God created everything.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding here is that the heavens, which in Hebrew is a plural word, just it's automatically plural because
Mm-hmm.
there's a thickness to it or a pluriformity to it or a depth to it or a multiplicity to it. Like waters is also a plural word in Hebrew. I mean, it could theoretically be singular, but there's, and the seas as well, it's just this plural thing. So God created the heavens, as I understand it. That means the angelic kingdom. That means the throne of God. And also that means that you've got an instantaneously complete and, so to say, perfect in that sense. It doesn't need any further development.
Mm-hmm.
Thing created, God's habitation, the angels. And then you've got this other thing, the earth, which is actually going to include sky and space, which will be called the heavens, but it won't mean the same thing necessarily. I'm not sure how that all works. So the earth then is developed. So God created the heavens perfect, and he creates the earth incomplete, and then he's going to start working on it through the week, the 6 days, and he's going to make it more and more like what he wants it to be. Now, to me, that, by the way, sets up all the issues I raise in Proverbs and other stuff about maturity. That the whole issue of the Bible is that the earth needs to be made into something new. It's okay, like a baby. It's not guilty of anything. There's no sin in the world. There's no limit. The limitations are not related to ethics. God's not hostile to the world. The world is not hostile to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yet God deliberately creates it as a mess and then puts some order into it.
Mm-hmm.
I assume, Andrew, this is not new thoughts to you, but I just
No, it's that's just it. I mean, it already, even from the very beginning, that that when it's formless and void, so it's created, but it's created in an initial stage, and just like you said, it's even from the very beginning, even from the very first act of creation, maturity or progress toward maturity is built into the creation. There's, if you could say a telos, that there's an end to which this is going. So if it's created formless and void, it's not going to remain, that way. Just as a baby is not going to remain a baby, it's going to grow into a man or to a
normally,
woman.
yeah, absolutely, and it's supposed to. If something's gone wrong, if that doesn't happen. And of course, then we can talk about maturity and how sometimes the stuff goes wrong with us and our thinking and our living, and then we develop bad habits and we end up as overgrown children. And so, sorry, plug for my book. Okay. Well, but seriously, it is what I'm thinking about, and it is kind of the stuff I should have. My book doesn't have any of this stuff in it. I mean, it has very little. I mean, it has, but I mean, I know that recently someone asked me about like all this biblical theology, like being behind the book. I'm like, that's in my head, but I didn't put that in the book. It just happens to be in your head too. But anyway,
yeah, you're on the same wavelength. And well, I think, just to interject real briefly, it's a thing where if you're really steeped in a particular book, especially in a book like Proverbs, you're going to see that all over the place. So if someone, or even if someone is steeped in the book of Leviticus, like this is something I've been meditating on Leviticus quite a bit, and just reading it over and over and over again, to try to just think about worship and liturgy. And you see it in every book of the Bible. You see Levitical type themes in every book of the Bible. You see covenant renewal. You see all these things everywhere, and it just jumps out at you. And it's the same with Proverbs, where you're going to see these types of themes, because I mean the Bible is, I think we could just speak a moment about methodology or hermeneutical practice, or whatever you want to say, that the Bible is this complex book, and it's a divine book. It's not it's breathed out by God, and there are it's so interconnected that every bit of the Bible, it's not a stretch to say every bit of the Bible relates to every other bit. Or you could be thinking about a couple chapter pericope, or even less than that, a small section of the Bible, and think about every other part of the Bible as it relates to that. And that's good biblical interpretation, is to be thinking about the whole Bible as you're looking at a particular passage.
And if anyone doubts this, if anyone doubts this is true, we'll show you that it's not. We'll do it. Right.
That's right. Yeah, we'll show you that it is. Yeah.
That's right.
We're going to do it.
Yeah, we are. But I wanted to say, I had a note here, and I wrote these notes ages ago. But what I said about the heavens, I have a note I wrote to Psalm 89, 5-11, and it's interesting. This follows the same kind of dynamic. Verse 5 of Psalm 89. It's from Ethan the Ezrahite. The heavens will praise thy wonders, O Lord, and thy faithfulness also in the assembly of the holy ones, which I think would mean angels in that context. For who in the skies is comparable to Yahweh, to the Lord? Who among the sons of the mighty is like the Lord? So that's where I get the idea that this included the whole host of angels and everything. And awesome above all those who are around him. O Lord God of hosts, who is like thee, O mighty Lord? Thy faithfulness also surrounds thee. The NSB uses thee sometimes for God. Thou dost rule the swelling sea. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. When its waves rise, thou dost still them. Thou thyself did crush Rahab, like one who is slain, did scatter thine enemies with the mighty arm. The heavens are thine, the earth also is thine, the world and all it contains. So it goes from heavens to the earth. Now it talks about the sea monsters in there. Rahab is a name of a dragon. Also stands in for Egypt. which we'll get to if we get that far in Genesis 1 a little bit, the background for that. But anyway, so you got the skies, the heavens, the holy ones, the mighty ones, sons of the mighty. These are the angels, the council of Yahweh. One other thing is in First John, we know that John alludes to this passage and begins his gospel this way, and he kind of makes an association between Jesus and light. So you have a Trinitarian formula where you have God creating, the Spirit is over the waters, and light issues from it. Let there be light. So that is the same kind of order you see in Revelation 1:4-5, where you have the Father mentioned on the throne, and then the Spirit, and then the Son, or the Word, or the Lamb mentioned. It follows that kind of pattern. So anyway, let me think. I actually have a lot more to say about this passage. Hopefully we'll get to the next day one before we're done. I believe this is the first time we've got the Bible talking about the glory cloud that comes up again and again in the Exodus. And maybe before that, it depends on what is being seen or talked about when it says God appears to someone or God talks to someone. I mean, sometimes I think it's the pre-incarnate theophany that would look like a human being. It would just be a man. I mean, even as far forward as Judges, that happens. I mean, Judges, you have the angel of the Lord appear, and they don't know it's the angel of the Lord until he does a miracle or does something, and they think they're going to die because they've seen the Lord. But other times, it's this glorious cloud, and this cloud came onto Egypt and led the Israelites out of Israel. Out of Egypt. Excuse me. Israelites out of Egypt. Because I should say the Hebrews, the children of Abraham, the people who became Israelites when they moved to Israel. But and when he, of course, when he parted the Red Sea, he made darkness on one side to protect them, made darkness on the Egyptian army side, and light, pillar of fire, on the Hebrew side. Then, of course, as we'll see in day 2, or maybe day 3, he made dry land appear in the sea. So the formation of Israel is kind of like a whole new creation here. It follows this pattern. But also that cloud, the words here in verse 2, the earth was formless and void, and darkness over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving or hovering or fluttering even over the face of the waters. Those two those two words, the formless and then the fluttering or moving, they only appear together one other time in the Pentateuch. And that's in Deuteronomy chapter, when I looked up Psalm 89, I lost my place in Deuteronomy, I think 30. Hold on a second, I'll tell you. Not 30, 32, the Song of Moses.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, and so he says this about, he's talking about the Exodus, and he says, when the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of man, he set boundaries of the peoples according to the numbers of the sons of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the allotment of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land, in the howling waste of a wilderness. Sorry, there. So that's formless. This howling waste is the same word as that formless void. And let's see. And then and he found him in a desert land, the howling waste of a wilderness. He encircled him. He cared for him. He guarded him as the pupil of his eye, like the eagle that stirs up its nest, that hovers over its young. Now goes back. That's the Spirit hovering over the water. Same word there. So these words don't. I think there's only one other time in the whole Old Testament they appear together, but only this is the only other time in the Pentateuch. And I don't see how this could not be an allusion back to creation, that God made Israel a new creation. So
yeah, and even the very beginning, the very first verse of chapter 32, it says, "Give ear, O heavens, and I'll speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth." I mean, so you start out with heaven and earth being called, and then we get to there to this illusion of just before the first day.
So I mean, what did hover over the Israelites in the wilderness? I think the answer is that glory cloud. Sorry, my dog just joined me over here to watch me talk to you, so I distracted. Okay, but anyway, so I wanted that. He can leave him there. It's fine. So I just wanted to say that this is kind of the theophany, the Spirit of God hovering over the waters. It's some kind of visible manifestation. This glory cloud. It'll be a pillar of cloud by day, pillar of fire by night. And probably that's the cloud that emits light when God says, "Let there be light." I mean, we can guess. And then he attaches it to other sources. But anyway.
Yeah, especially, I think that's a fair point to bring up, that because people will be like, well, how was there light when there weren't, sun and moon and stars until, later on the week, day 4. And well, yeah, how was there? Well, it's this glory cloud.
That's possible. Yes, I think so. I mean, but apart from that, I would just say the fact is, God does miracles, and according to this, God worked a miraculous light, which he then attached to a natural source.
Yeah, he could do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, right. So, but it seems like with Exodus and the way God works and the way God illuminates their path at night, or is visible at night as a pillar of fire, with the imagery of the hovering eagle compared to the glory, the Spirit of God hovering over the waters, that's what happened. The light, the cloud itself was the light. So in any case, I think that's all I have to say right now. So
that's good. Well, we can always go back to it too.
Yeah, right. Why don't you go ahead and read both days 1 and 2. Start verse 3 there.
Okay. Yeah. And then God said, this is from the New King James. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Then God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide waters from the waters." Thus God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day.
All right. So God establishes light. It makes it like a second act of separation. I'm not sure what exactly that means. I mean, but in any case, if you got any ideas, let me know. But maybe just refers to the fact the earth came between. There's a dark side of the earth and a light side of the earth with the Spirit of God hovering there. That was otherwise all a watery kind of chaos. And then, I mean, my reading of this is that we basically have kind of like an ascension, the first ascension in the Bible, that God takes some of that water and takes it up into the heavens. Because I don't think this expanse is just the atmosphere or the sky. I don't think it's a vapor canopy. It might refer to just all the space, period. And so, just everything you can visit in a rocket is all expanded out of this kind of envelope. But it represents an expanse or some kind of barrier. My version says expanse, firmament. I think it just means beaten out. No one's sure what that entails. However, when we see the theophany sometimes, I've got notes I wrote and penciled in for Ezekiel 1, 22, and 26. And yeah, if you want to look it up, I mean, there, when Ezekiel sees a vision of this glory cloud and something on the throne being carried by the cherubim, all these angels, he says that above it, there's like this ceiling of crystal or ice. And then John, of course, when he's taken up into heaven, he says that below the throne is a sea of crystal or a sea of glass, depending on which translation you read. So it sounds like there's some kind of curtain. Actually, I'm pointing that word for another reason, but there's some kind of field. I mean, you know, if you've read enough science fiction, you can easily imagine this, but that's, I don't know, maybe that's, you know, the idea is that there's some kind of separation that sometimes when you're given prophetic vision, you can actually see. You can see this barrier and it's being penetrated by God, or else it's there below you or above you. Now, so the other thing though, well, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you want to say anything before I?
I think, I mean, even in the secular scientistic cosmology, you know, they still believe there's a point at which the universe stops, right? It isn't infinite. They believe there's a point at which, right, universe stops, and then there's, you know, and there be nothing outside of here. Outside of this point. So even within that, there's, you know, I think it's interesting, you know, how that same, because there's, you know, there's some things they probably get right or understand correctly or perceive correctly about the created universe, and I think that very well could be one of them, that there is some barrier, some edge, you know, of where it stops. And is that this, you know, the sea of ice or crystal that Ezekiel and John describe? You know, maybe, I don't know, but I think it's still the same idea of the firmament being everything up above us in every direction, you know, from the earth, you know, radiating outward.
Well, I kind of think that does, you know, come into this. I kind of wonder if that's a symbol of the other heavens, like the you know, you got the heavens above the barrier. The barrier is kind of the heavens, or it's called, because the expanse is called sky or heavens, and then you've got stars put in it. But I kind of think, I don't know, whatever we find like, I was just looked at Isaiah 64:1. It assumes that this thing needs to be torn up in order for God to come visit you. He's got to punch a hole in it. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down.
The firmament.
And I think some of the tabernacle veils, were some of them blue? I mean, you definitely, you pass through the veil, and then you're in the presence of the seraphim or the cherubim, and only certain people can go there or they die. So, for example, if we go, and I only know this because I happen to have written a book about Mark's gospel, but if you start in Mark 1 at his baptism, verse 9, it came about in those days that Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan River, and immediately coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens. It says opening, but it's more violent than that. Being parted is my margin note. I think ripped apart would be a fair translation too. Just torn open. And the Spirit like a dove fluttering, right, descending on him. Obviously everyone isn't. Now, so that's, you got the Spirit, you've got the heavens torn, and you've got his baptism. Oh, and then the voice out of the heavens, thou art my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. So then you go all the way, flip over to the crucifixion and Jesus' death. And it's important to remember that this word for spirit and the word for breath are the same word in both Hebrew and Greek. So, I mean, in fact, some of the, I think older, in fact, what is actually, I want you to read this in the KJV just in case. You might have the older, hold on, let me find it. It's chapter 15, verse, what do you have for 1537?
37, and Jesus cried out with a loud voice and breathed his last.
Oh, that's what I have too, but I think the original KJV would have said gave up his spirit.
Gave up his spirit,
I think. I
Yeah.
might be wrong about that. But the point is, breathed his last, spirited, expired. And the centurion in 39 will confess, surely this man was the Son of God. When he saw the way he died and he breathed his last. But instead of the heavens being ripped open, verse 38, and the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom.
Okay, let me find it.
Oh, I might be misremembering the KJV.
I'm looking for the King James version. Okay. And gave up the ghost.
So I mean, anyway, that's actually not completely different. You see, you read that in English, you think that's totally different than what it's not totally different. It's
It's more
interpretation of the
accurate.
words.
Yeah, it's
It
more
might
accurate.
be.
Yeah. I mean, it's that word, pneuma. I mean, I think it's at least makes reference to that in English, for us, the ambiguity. Yeah.
Right. So I'm pointing that out. Now, this is the thing, and I already mentioned how there's themes here that tie into stuff I was trying to get across, and Solomon says, and that I think are involved in maturity. And we have to remember that in Ephesians, when Paul is describing this huge salvation, golly, I'm so used to my Kindle, I'm no longer skilled at flipping through pages.
I'm the opposite now. I'm so over using a computer or a Kindle. I have to have a page. Yeah, I have to have an actual codex. Yeah, the ancient technology.
And I'd rather read the ESV actually because it's smoother, but I'll read the NSB here. Ephesians 1. In him, and this is verse 7. I'm breaking into, this is a huge praise prayer thing that Paul begins his very general book about. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses according to the riches of his grace. So we know that. I mean, we expect that. We know Jesus came to forgive sins, which he lavished upon us in all wisdom and insight. He made known to us the mystery of his will according to his kind intention, which he purposed in him, with a view to an administration suitable to the fullness of times. That is, the summing up of all things in Christ, things in the heavens and things upon the earth. Now, I think that's significant because that it talks later about Christ ripping down the veil or the barrier between Jew and Gentile. Those veils in the tabernacle and temple, they represented fundamentally a division between heaven and earth. They represent this firmament, this expanse, and that's how the Gospels kind of coalesce. I mean, the Gospel of Mark, as we just saw from beginning to end, it like has this inclusio where you have the Father declaring Jesus to be the Son, sending his Spirit at his baptism, and the heavens are ripped open. And then Jesus goes through what he calls his baptism. He says later on he has a baptism to undergo, and he's talking about his death. He undergoes that. He gives up his spirit, breathes his last. The Gentile witness declares him to be the Son of God. I don't know how much he knew or understood, but he says the words.
Yeah.
And then the veil is torn from top to bottom. So
and then you take it one step further, and especially in light of really the themes of Ephesians, that after that Jesus is resurrected and he ascends. So not only does he ascend, but his humanity, this God man, takes humanity up into past the firmament into the heavens. And the themes of Ephesians are is closely related really to like the Lord's Prayer, that God's will would be done on earth as is in heaven. Well, it's the same thing, that the warfare of the church is heavenly. It's with principality. I mean, so many multiple references in Ephesians to principalities and powers and dark hosts in the heavenly places. That's where this war is located.
That's right.
And that's where yeah, the emphasis is focused because that veil, that firmament has been torn, has been opened up, and God's people have been given access to it.
That's right. But one of the things this means is that Christ came to deliver us from sin. He also came, though, to fulfill a potential that God had put in the created order from the beginning before sin. There's something I talk about with wisdom, that Jesus grew in wisdom. Wisdom was something mankind was meant to develop and receive from God over time.
Yeah.
So there was something going on. In fact, I'm about to write a blog post about this, that the whole schema of man is capable of not sinning, and then he falls, so then he's not capable of not sinning. He has to sin, and then of course he gets justified, but he's got moral pollution. And so, well, that's all true, but it's not the only thing going on. Adam and Eve were also children. Humanities were children, and they're made to grow up and become something much greater than they were.
Yeah,
and Jesus also has to do that, including the union of heaven and earth.
Yeah, that's a question I love to ask people. I think I stole it probably from John Barrich. He gave a great sermon one time that appeared in Theophilus, and you just ask the question, how come Eve did not give birth to Jesus? Right? Why do you have this whole history? Because God gives the proto evangelion right to Adam and Eve. Why wasn't the seed born? Why was it Abel and not Jesus? Why is that? And you could give a million different answers, but really the answer is, and I'm getting way ahead of us. We're in chapter 1, but I'm already giving away chapter 3. Why was Jesus not born then? Why did they have to wait thousands of years for that? Does God just stingy? Is he just is he not wanting to save them? Why is this? And the answer, I think the answer is it is about maturity. The main point of the Bible is not fundamentally salvation, but maturity, which is people might be like, what? Are you serious? But it is that maturity is. Adam and Eve were born, like you said, born babies, and they were to grow into,
not literally, but
queens. Yeah, I mean they were full. Their maturity level was that of babies, but they were adults. But we'll get to that too. We'll get to that as well. But it's the point is that you start from in this infancy, in this toddlerhood, and you advance in maturity, and God's people advance in maturity. They're given more and more, and they're given more responsibility, just as you are, the individual is. So also God's people are given more responsibility and more rope to hang themselves with too, is the flip side of maturity.
Yeah. I was going to say, that question, the listeners won't probably know what I mean by this, but my stuff on Romans, maybe we got to have a conversation about Romans that also dovetails off that question, but from John Barrich. That's really good.
Absolutely.
John, I also, when we talk about Deuteronomy, I think that's also what's going on with when God talks about how they're going to sin, they're going to fall, blessed, but also be cursed. And after the cursing, they'll be given a new heart and a new soul. I think that also is that they cannot become God's people fully until they go through that process, because they have to deal with sin. So there's no point in sugarcoating that. They have to deal with sin so they can become a better person. And then when the Gospels come around, when Jesus comes there, they've run that out, and they've proven that they're still in the old Adam, still sinful. There's demons all over Israel, and so now we finally have the final sin and the final justification. The verdict falls that delivers us. Anyway, that's
even to piggyback on that a little bit. I think that's one of your points too, or at least a takeaway that I got from early on in your Mark commentary is that they no longer are worshiping Baal or Molech or Ashtoreth or
Yeah.
any of the demon gods of the old covenant. But the land is still completely inundated with demons everywhere.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's
and
not unprecedented. That's never happened before.
Yeah, you didn't see that in the old covenant. You would see some things. You would see high
Saul.
place worship. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
but
would see. Yep.
but demon possession. I'm saying you'd see Saul, and there's a couple other things but nothing like what you have in the Gospels.
Not to the degree it's
Yeah.
presented. If it's and I think it is representative of the actual situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. So you do have this demonic power. You do have these things that take place. You see some dark stuff. You see like the witch at Endor. You see
Right.
you see spooky stuff, but nothing to the degree that you see it in Israel at that time. And they've been swept out and of these demons when they're sent
Right.
into exile, and then more come back and fill the place, even though they aren't worshiping them anymore. But in a sense, they really still are, not formally. So anyway,
we've now back to Genesis 1. How long have we been talking?
Let's see here. We're going on 25 minutes, maybe 30.
Why don't we here. Yeah, all right. Why don't we let this be enough for these first two? God has established the light in the world, and he has separated out some water, which, by the way, my assumption is some of that water comes back in the flood, which is not a natural event. I assume there was more water. There'd be more water on the planet than there could be accounted for, I assume. But maybe not. I don't know. But anyway,
that's another thing where God can do whatever. If he wants to stop the earth from spinning, he's done that.
I know.
But
when the Bible says that the heavens are torn open, I'm feeling that's more of the supernatural firmament stuff going on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Why don't we stop there and try to do some more of the chapter in the next time, since we have
the next and of course this is Genesis 1 is the foundational primary chapter, so we won't go through 4 verses at a time. Once we get rolling through Genesis here, hopefully we'll do a chapter a week or most of a chapter. But for Genesis 1 and really Genesis 2 and 3, these ones are going to take some time, and it's worth digging and diving really deep into them. So
I agree. I thank you very much, Andrew. Let's do this again in a couple of weeks, or maybe in just a week. We'll see what we do.
Yeah.
And
as soon as we can. Absolutely.
All right. Hopefully everyone has gotten something out of this.
Absolutely.
And Andrew, appreciate your time. Thank you all. All right. Bye-bye.